So as I was thinking through this week, I thought, this would have been nice and convenient for Mother's Day if they would have, instead of using sheep, using children. But then I thought, there are lots of times when my children don't listen to me. And it's not unique to my children, I know. That's one of the things that, we as humans, I think, often have this selective hearing. That, we hear what we want to hear, and I can contrast that. And I'm not going to say that we have 2 dogs in my house, and they're not perfectly obedient. But when they hear my footsteps coming up to the house, I can hear both of them echoing, saying, "You're here, you're home, welcome home, come let us out of our room or our cage." If Shemar, my little Pomeranian, is back in his basket where he likes to sleep, if he's asleep and I say, "Shemar, you want to go out?" in 2 seconds he's at the back door saying, "Okay, what are you waiting for? Open the door. Come on, person." He pays attention to those things. Now, there are lots of other things that he does not pay attention for. I'm going to grab this so I can advance slides. But I do think that there are times where the image of this gospel reading, where my own hear my voice, I think that can be a very gracious thing for us to hear. That, we, as people gathered together, are people who God has spoken or Jesus has spoken, and we have heard His voice when we come together. Now, I don't know about anybody else. I talk to a lot of people in a lot of different places, and have you ever talked to somebody who, you're trying to share what you believe, or you're trying to share things that are important to you, and they just kind of give you this look like, "Oh, that's nice." I think that there are lots of people who we come into our world and we try to share what's important to us. We try to share, that this is our God who is at the center of our life. This is what's crucial to us. And it doesn't mean the same thing to them. It doesn't impact them in the same way every single time. And on the one hand, I think we can kind of become irritated and judgmental about that. But I think one of the things that's helpful to be reminded of is that, the people who Jesus calls, no matter which gospel you happen to look at it, the people who Jesus calls are always for the sake of the rest of the world. You use Matthew's gospel. We're called to be salt, that which preserves the world. We're called to be light, that which illuminates the world. We're called to be all of these things. And, not everybody's going to see it the exact same way. We live in a world where we have a lot of people going in all kinds of different directions, and we all put our trust, our faith in something. Even if a person says, "I don't believe in God," well, they've put their trust and their faith in something. And I think a lot of people put their trust and faith in things that they're not bad things, but we just put them in the wrong place. We put them something that should be in a second or a third place. We put it in the first place. So there, and I'm going to guess that you can kind of identify with some people like this. So there are people who put everything on their kids. Their life revolves around their kids, and they live their life through their kids, and they're doing everything they can to make sure that their kid, gets a 1600 on the SAT and a 36 on the ACT and is a starting quarterback for their football team so they can go to Harvard or Yale or whatever. And, hey, I need to invest everything in like this because if I get my kids through this, then I'm a success. There are people who, family is a great thing, but if we put it as the primary thing, as the central thing, as the only thing in our life, it can become something that leads us down the wrong path. There are people who say, my position or my power or my wealth or my prestige, that's the central thing that I need to put my trust in, that I need to be able to make sure that I have enough in my bank account to make sure that I can cover whatever comes up or all these things. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a savings account or shouldn't prepare for retirement. But I think when that becomes what our life is centered around, when having enough is the most important thing in our life, then we become miserable. There are millionaires who don't think they have enough. There are billionaires who don't think they have enough. That's why they continue to accumulate more and more and more. And it can be other things. It can be politics. It can be a team, a sports team, whether in high school or college or in the pros. It can be all these things to where that becomes the thing that my life rotates around and everything else takes a second place to that. And again, none of these things are bad things, and I think all of us are trying to put together what a good life looks like, what the life that we want to live looks like, and I think sometimes the box got open and it looks like this. Now, I would never do this puzzle. It would take me forever. Again, because there are too many colors that look alike, and my son could probably do this puzzle in an hour, but it's just not my gift. But I do think that sometimes trying to make sense out of all the different things that come to us in life can be hard, can be challenging, and we need something that is at that center, that whether it's a puzzle where you put together the outside boundary and you work inward from that, or whether it's our life. And I think that in our life it's that which is that central thing, that one thing. I was talking to one of the people who was here yesterday. We had Independence High School, their soccer club, did a car wash here yesterday. And so I met one of the adult volunteers to get them started and get them set up. And we were talking, and they live in this area, but they'd never noticed the temple next door. And for those who don't know, this is one of the largest Hindu temples in the United States. But they've been doing a lot of work, and especially recently, you look at the front, it's changed a great deal. They're in this process of making it look more like a temple would in India. And I said, well, this is also one of the fastest growing groups in the United States right now. Or not in the United States, in Frisco right now. Actually, a fairly small group in the United States, but in Frisco right now, it's a fairly large group. If you work in a school or anything else, you're going to see a lot of people of various backgrounds, but a lot of people of an Indian background, because they value education, they value being together in community, they value all these things. We also have a church that worships here on Friday nights who rent space from us, the Coptic Church. They many of them are first and second generation here in the United States, and the church is not only, the church is a place where they come together and they hear the Word of God, but it's not only that. It's also a place where they come together and they celebrate who they are, that their culture. So these are people who've come to the United States from the area around Egypt, and they're able to kind of be with other people who share some of that. Now, for most of us who may have a Lutheran heritage, our big migration may have happened 100 years ago, or even more in some cases. I served on my internship like 17 years ago. This is one of the churches I served up in Blanchardville, Wisconsin. This is Blanchardville Lutheran Church, one of two Lutheran churches in a town of 800 in a rural Wisconsin town. And this was all Norwegians, all Norwegian Lutherans. They moved there, they settled there, they built their church there, and this was very, very important to them. So one of the things I got to do while I was there, I was looking back through some of their history, and we think of, you go drive 30 miles to go pick something up. Okay, 30 minutes, maybe 45, you run in a little bit of traffic, no big deal. When they built this church, they didn't have automobiles. So they had to go 30 miles to go get the brick. So it was a day down by a horse cart to go get the brick, a day back, and then you did that. And again, it's not like you pick up a semi-load worth of brick. You're picking up maybe at most a small pallet worth of brick at a time. So this was a lot of work and a lot of trips back and forth and a lot of effort from the community to come together to build this beautiful building that they had. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to have a place where they could gather together for their community, but they wanted this to be a place where they gathered together, they could celebrate being Norwegian, but more than that, they wanted to celebrate that, hey, we can come together, we can worship, we can pass on this faith that we have. And they have a number of stained glass windows in there. One of them is a window, this is a Psalm 23 window, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And again, it was the building and the place and the people were there to pass on that faith, that which was central to them from generation to generation. And I do think that's, one of the gifts of this day, of Mother's Day, is, many of us received our faith from our mothers or our fathers, that, somebody handed it on to us. And, that was one of the ways I trust that the Spirit was at work in doing this and kind of pointing us back to, well, what do we come together around? What are we centered on? Well, ultimately, if we're doing what we're supposed to do, we're centered on Jesus. We're centered on the Lord who is our shepherd. And I love Psalm 23. I mean, it's such a common one that people know, but it really does focus in on God is the one who watches over us, who takes us to the places where we need to go. For sheep, that is the green pastures and the places that have the flowing water. And shepherds have to continually work with sheep. Now, I don't know how many people have ever been around sheep. They are dumb animals. They are not like your border collie or anything else like that. They are nowhere near that smart. They are animals that, oh, well, here's a nice little clump of grass, and they'll eat the grass until it goes somewhere, and then they'll look around, okay, there's another little clump over there. And I remember one of my teachers years ago told me a story that he'd gone to the Holy Land, and he wanted to see how the shepherds in the Holy Land actually kind of got the sheep to move. So he was kind of anticipating them having the big crook and everything. And they some of them had the staffs that they walked with and everything. But, so he's sitting there watching, and the shepherds are out there with the sheep. And there's this one sheep that's kind of off doing his own little thing like sheep sometimes do. And the shepherd calls to it and it doesn't pay any attention. The shepherd calls to it again, doesn't pay attention. And apparently this was a well-practiced trick because he hit it square on, picks up a rock, slings it at the sheep. Sheep gets hit, shakes its head, trot back over to where everybody else was. I've also often wondered, when, and this is a very common, because sheep were really common in ancient Israel. But the metaphor of God being my shepherd means that I'm a sheep, and that's not really a compliment to me. I want to think that I'm smart and I'm independent, and probably because I'm smart and independent, I'm the very one who has to be over in that place, and God has to sometimes get my attention and say, no, back over here. But God is the one who walks with us through those dark times. True. One of the great pieces of this psalm, He walks with me through the darkest valley, or through the valley of the shadow of death, as the old translations used to say. And I love that language, and that's actually close to the Hebrew that's behind it. God walks through us not only through the good times, but the hard times. And God's, a lot of times, we in America, we kind of bristle at those things that, well, don't put any restrictions on me. Let me do it my own way. Well, but we need those boundaries, those things. And so in Psalm 23, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The fact that you can nudge me in the right direction, or sometimes shove me in the right direction, is something that I need at times. It's something that I need to be reminded of. That, and ultimately what God is doing in the midst of all of this is not just for my sake, but it's for the sake of this world that's around me. And again, I do think that one of the great gifts of our tradition, going back for Luther, we're going to celebrate confirmation with 4 of our students, and then we'll have 2 other students that are coming in that we've worked with another church. We're going to celebrate with them, and one of the things they had to at least hear, I'm not going to say that they all remember it, but they at least had to hear this year. We walked through Luther's Small Catechism, and when Luther talks in the Small Catechism about what faith is about, it's part of the Apostles' Creed, but he says, I believe that by my own strength or understanding, I cannot come to know Jesus or worship Him. Instead, it's the Holy Spirit that does this. That faith itself is a gift. And it's not a gift just so that I can be better than everybody else. It's a gift for that sake of the rest of the world around me. And this is, I do trust this is part of what God is doing. And there may be all kinds of people walking along and putting their trust in all kinds of other things. But I also think that this is one of those places where we hope. We're not at the end of the story yet. One of the other lessons for today comes from the book of Revelation. And you have this countless multitude that's gathered together. And they're singing praise to God. And it's this multitude that's from every nation and every tongue and every tribe. And they're sitting there singing, blessing and honor and glory and praise be to God, the Father, the Almighty, and the Lamb who sits on the throne. It's this worship that comes from every nation and every place. And, there's this hope that, here's this entire world gathered together around and praise. Paul can talk about it in a slightly different way, talking about, every knee in heaven and under and on earth and under the earth will bow, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God our Father. That's where we hope, that's what we desire to see. And ultimately, that's God's work. We may have our part to play within it of telling our story, of telling that's what's important to us. No matter how much my title as pastor may talk about this, pastor and shepherd are related words. I've probably told this joke before, but I was driving down into to visit my family down in the San Antonio area, and I drove past a Spanish-speaking church, and it was I know enough Spanish to be dangerous, but it was the Church of the Buen Pastor, the Church of the Good Pastor, but it's actually the Church of the Good Shepherd. Pastor and shepherd are the same word. Anyways, no matter how much my title may talk about me as a shepherd, all I can do is be one who follows the Good Shepherd. And hopefully, by following the Good Shepherd, hopefully others follow in that same path, follow in that same direction. And I trust that, we are those who are together kind of walking in that same direction. We're the ones who are walking behind the Good Shepherd, and maybe others are walking behind us, seeing the way in which we go and knowing that, here's where all that flock is going. Maybe they're going to where the good food is. Maybe they're going to where the still waters are. Maybe they know the way through the midst of this valley of the shadow of death. But the one who leads them, we trust is faithful. We trust is saying to us the things that we need to hear, calling us in the direction we need to go. And so we come today and we worship and we sing and we give praise because we've been called. We've heard the Savior's voice. We've been gathered together and we go. We go because Jesus calls us and says, "You are mine. Come, follow me." And just like Peter and James and John, who were called out of the boats, or Matthew, who was called out of the tax collector's booth, or others throughout the ages who have been called, we too have heard that voice say to us, "You're mine. You're one of mine. Come, follow me." And there will be others who we encounter in the midst of the world who will say, "Oh, that's nice. That's sweet." And you're not going to be able to change all of that. Ultimately, what our goal is, what our calling is to follow the one who leads us. Pay attention when the Lord calls us. And to not be that sheep who sometimes has to have God get his attention every once in a while. Okay, if it's every once in a while, that's fine, but it's my tendency is much more okay, well, here's a nice spot over here, let me go off and be on a tangent in this direction. And, we learn from other places, from another parable, that God is the one who will leave the 99 to go get that one. But may we continue to be a part of the 99 who can welcome the one back. Amen.